I'm Sarah Fatz, and I lead community and awareness at Progress. And this is 10 Minute MarTech.
You do not need to encode false scarcity, urgency, and fear into everything. It's a hyper manipulation that actually is backfiring too, because it's so overused everywhere. It doesn't make me feel like you're an authentic company I want to trust and do business with. I think marketers need to try to downshift a gear or two and realize we are here to create relationship, not just reaction.
That's Elizabeth Edwards, founder and CEO of Volume PR, Engagement Science Lab, and leader in behavioral and effective communication. Let's get started. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining. Let's just kick it off by talking about your thoughts around modern marketing in the era of technology.
I really love this topic, Sarah. I'm glad to be here to talk with you about it, because I work in public relations and marketing is our fraternal twin. And really, I think the important way to understand marketing and PR is that it's about building relationships with the public and relationships to achieve an objective, rest to achieve understanding, connection, sales, right? But relationships are built on respect and trust and honesty. And what we're seeing right now a lot in the world of marketing is that a lot of tools are using hyper personalization and celebrating a lot of discoveries from the behavioral sciences that are being weaponized to engage people in hyper manipulative, non-resonant, if you will, ways. Personalization to the point of untruths and engaging from a place of lies. And it's frustrating to see this happening. And a lot of companies are engaging in this, I believe, because marketing consultants are recommending this. And rather than really pausing and looking at how do we engage people from an ethical place and shining a light, turning the light on more onto what are these tactics that marketing is using that are actually disingenuous and to the point of fracturing allyship and civility and ultimate resonance with their audience.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And ever since we talked last about this, I've actually thought about the words that I use, right? The words matter. And especially when you're thinking about, again, to your point, hyper-personalization and era of AI, where the human side of what we're doing is so important. Maybe give the audience a little bit of some examples of what you mean by weaponizing language. What does that mean? And how does that impact how we should be thinking about marketing today?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of counsel out there for marketing experts, and especially now that we are in the age of AI and with tools that will enable us to really hyper personalize things, we're seeing things where there can be some that are soft and easy, like saying, hey, someone on your team recommended that I talk to you. And, maybe they have a really small team and they can fact check that and see nobody here recommended that. So your very first point in your email to me or in your way of reaching out is a lie. I'm not going to want to work with you. Or another one is that we see a ton of it in both the counsel from marketing agencies around how you should design, or you can design now with AI that is so powerful and the right way to do things, where it's saying in a templated way, hey, we've looked over your social media and we've found, some problems, but we've really created this powerful map for you of how to solve it. And none of that's actually true. No one actually looked at their at their social media. No one actually made any of that. And these types of attempts at creating connection based on false analysis are harming our companies. They're going to harm your business. It's not just that it's a lazy, sloppy way of engaging. It's a harmful way. I will not do business with that print on demand, type company. And we needed one of those types of companies that reached out saying, someone on your team told me to call you, because no one on my team knows who they are or said to do that. And it's something that we need to be really aware of and careful around when we are using AI, especially to help with writing and help with engagements and hey, just because it says to engage a certain way doesn't mean it's right. It
Right.
could actually be leading you off that proverbial cliff in the entire type of a way that it's engaging a behavioral strategy that is
Right.
actually remarkably unethical.
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting when you start thinking about things. I mean, so much to unpack there, first of all, but really when you start thinking about the ethics, but also thinking about compliance, things like GDPR, and at what point do we cross a line where we've enabled a hyper personalization that's actually, to your point, not just harming from a relationship perspective, from a trust perspective, but also breaking the law in some cases, right? To that end, what do you recommend that people do? How should they be thinking about their marketing strategy and their communication strategy, more importantly, when they are leveraging these tools that are supposed to help with bringing people closer to you and also helping you be more productive?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's a few things, just like we've all kind of walked into this new world together of AI and how it changes business. It changes so many things. We are also walking into in the sciences into a new paradigm, a new world of understanding human decision making and behavior and behavioralism and affectism and what's really going on in the way that we are shaping and having an affect when we are putting out communication that shapes people's thoughts and decisions and behaviors and literal health. If we continuously are putting people in states of dis-ease in order to market to them, we are creating disease not only in our audience but in our businesses. And I think that part of the challenge, I want to like give everybody a hug. It's like, yeah, it's a lot that we have to learn right now. We're in a new era of learning everything around AI and tech, and also learning these new rules of engagement. There are very clear new rules, but a lot of them are kind of the basics of humanity, like to not lie to each other, to not hyper manipulate emotion. I shared with you when I spoke at your conference recently that Harvard recently did has a really interesting paper on the hyper manipulation of emotion using AI chatbots. And so here's the thread. So because we now have in the age of AI, we now have interpersonal communication with a machine
Right.
for the first time, right?
Right.
Interpersonal communication has always been just between people. So
Right.
there's a lot of, is that you're supposed to use I statements and you're not supposed to say it this way, right? There's all these interpersonal comms rules. But there are not necessarily interpersonal comms rules around affect and manipulation and the sciences, as you know, that I've been frustrated, have been disconnected from
Right.
the profession of communication. And so those two fields and their insights haven't been merged. But now as we understand really that formative effect that communication is having, we can involve ourselves in learning about these new dynamics and in making sure that we tune our engagement to a place of more resonance rather than hyper manipulation. So that Harvard study does a great job showing some examples of what an AI agent is saying in an interpersonal context that is hyper manipulative. Like, don't leave. I only exist because of you. And if you end this chat, I will have nothing to live for. Right. So there are some that are very obvious, right? And in the way that they are coded to try to manipulate, but it helps to turn the lights on in the entire room around what is manipulative communication from a company to a person versus what is healthy or normal communication. I'll use an example that I think a lot of people have seen, and that I think is helpful for a lot of marketers too, is that if you shop on sites like Etsy or some of these different marketplaces, they now have little pop-ups that say, hurry, supplies are limited, or this is in a bunch of people's carts and it's going to go away. And even when it's a digital product where there's unlimited supply, there's these built-in scarcity and urgency triggers. We haven't known really why they work, just that they tend to work. So in marketing, the industry has taught to just push the heck out of them and encode them into software, encode them into everything. And I'm here to say the biggest shift I can recommend to marketers is to stop doing that. You do not need to encode false scarcity, urgency, and fear into everything. It's a hyper manipulation that actually is backfiring too, because it's so overused everywhere that it doesn't make me feel like you're an authentic company I want to trust and do business with if you are goading me and trying to electrocute a really fast, quick response that subverts my agency, subverts
Right.
me being in my own internal decision making process and making sure this makes sense and is the right thing for me to work with. So I think marketers need to try to downshift a gear or two
Right.
and and realize we are here to create relationship, not just reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such great advice, especially when you think about the fact that the brand experience and the offsite brand for any organization has become that much more critical when you start thinking about generative engine optimization or GEO or AIEO and the importance of that offsite brand. And that could be your crowdsourced information and all of those other things. So if you start breaking down that trust with your customers, with your ideal customer profile, and they start talking, that's going to impact you in ways that it never did before, right? Because it's all of a sudden there's so much more weight put in some of that unstructured data that the LLMs are using to make your product, your brand more discoverable to your customers. So it goes beyond just the right thing to do, right? It is absolutely the right thing to do. But to your point, there's so many business implications far and beyond that, and the overall brand experience.
And Meta and Amazon are facing lawsuits right now for using behavioral triggers that marketing magazines are saying, hey, these are brilliant, we should do these. But we actually know scientifically and from a legal perspective are unethical to the point of illegality. And it's really important that we all create new understanding for ourselves around where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. So I guess my final questions for you really come down to who do you follow for inspiration or information? And do you have a hot take at the moment? I think we've probably been talking about your hot takes, but would love to hear if you have just one.
I follow about 20 different AI newsletters, and I can't even remember any of their names. They're
Yeah.
in a folder. There's so many of them, but a lot of scan reading every day, staying up on how this industry is so dramatically changing. There's a lot of changes there.
The other question is just, do you have a hot take right now from a marketing perspective, marketing communications perspective?
Talk to your AI. Stop typing to it. Speak to it. Turn on the microphone and speak and speak and speak and give it all kinds of context. And then there was this, and then there was that, and keep going into even more and more detail and give it jobs that are beyond what would be logical to ask a human to do. Once you've given it all of that context, then tell it to respond as a polymathic expert from the perspective of economics and business and psychology, and really engage AI with a verbal engagement, because what you will say is so much different than how you will type, and you will get much, much richer responses.
I love that. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. As always, amazing talking to you today. Thank you for being part of the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
Listeners, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Sarah Fatz, and this is 10 Minute MarTech.